Good morning. We're going to start our board meeting this morning. So I'd like to tell everyone good morning. And this is the convenience of the First Responder Network Authorities Combined Board and Committees meeting. I'm the board chair, Richard Carrizo. I'd like to introduce Sarah Morris over here, if she could wave. Thank you, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Department of Commerce. So we appreciate you being here today, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And we want to thank everybody that's joining us today on WebEx. The board's pleased to be meeting in Chicago today and will be participating in the 5x5 conference starting tomorrow. The board will be. This is hosted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Public Safety, Communications, and Research Division, along with the FirstNet Authority this week. Today we're going to review the agenda as we get started. We'll be discussing the proposed 2025 budget, as well as the voting on the proposed budget. We'll also be discussing the FirstNet Authority's priorities for the fiscal year from our executive director. We'll be getting updates from the Finance and Investment Committee, which will then move on to the full board for the resolution for the budget. We'll also receive the Public Safety Advocacy Committee update from our PSAC Chair, Chris Lombard. We appreciate you being here today, Chris. And we'll also be getting updates from the Advocacy and Programs, Future and Planning Committees. At this time, I'd like to ask our Board Secretary, Jennifer Watts, to call roll and also confirm that each committee has a quorum before we begin.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I will mark you as present. Renee Gordon. Billy Bob Brown Jr.
Present.
Joe Carlisle.
Present.
Brian Crawford.
Present.
Alexandra Fernandez Navarro. Present. Kristen Graziano. Present. Billy Hughes.
Present.
Peter Katushin.
Present.
Sean McDevitt.
Present.
Warren Mickens.
Present.
Sylvia Moyer.
Present on WebEx.
Paul Patrick.
Present.
Jocelyn Moore. Okay, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum for the board as well as for all four committees. Now I will read the conflict statement. Prior to participating in the FirstNet Authority Combined Board and Committees meeting today, the board members have reviewed the agenda as well as the conflicts of interest guidance provided by the Ethics Law and Program Division of the Department of Commerce, Office of General Counsel, regarding the conflict of interest standards that apply to the board members. All board members have responded prior to today's meeting that they do not have a conflict and will not need to recuse themselves from participation in any portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I believe you all have had time to review the minutes from our March meeting. Does anyone have any additions, corrections to those meetings? Notes? Seeing none, I'd be willing to take a motion to accept those meetings. Notes?
Board Member Fernandez Navarro, I make the motion that we accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, Peter Katushin here. I second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the March meetings are accepted. Madam Secretary, please make the minutes available to the public following this meeting. This time, I'd like to turn over the meeting to our Executive Director, Joe Wassel, who's going to introduce us to some of our priorities for 2025. Joe.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Board. Thank you, NTIA. Thanks for folks out in WebEx. Glad to be with you this morning. And as the Chief said, we are super excited to be here in Chicago with our partners at NIST, PSCR. Quite frankly, in combination with the board and the PSAC, with all of our industry partners, our academic partners, our international partners, this really is a rally point now for innovation leadership. So we are thrilled to be here this week. Also, I'd like to talk about a few things about the future of the network. I'm going to cover I'm very excited about the budget this year. When we're going to go and do a little bit of a deep dive into that. I am excited that the budget will be completed for the first time in this early in the year. Our first try at zero-based budgeting, which went very well, and it's tied to priorities, of which I'm going to go into now as we think about our priorities for 2025. FirstNet reauthorization, we are setting the table. And although we are dependent on Congress's schedule, we're doing all we can to be prepared for reauthorization and after, and thinking about strategically for 2029. Coverage enhancements and network evolution. This is a 10-year investment that we mentioned back in February of $8.2 billion to get to a 5G network and to get to coverage, and more coverage for our stakeholders across this amazing country. From a cultural perspective, we are also purposefully supporting and growing a culture dedicated to our mission, diversity and inclusion, employee wellness, and recognition of our employees who embody our core values and support our best public safety stakeholders. Lastly, and certainly not least, is our organizational excellence. Our commitment to the state of continuous improvement in the organization and excellence in everything that we do. But no path to excellence is a straight line. And as I've mentioned in the past, we did have an outage back in February of this year. We immediately stood up a task force. That task force has come up with recommendations that have been briefed to the board. It's been briefed to NTIA and most recently briefed to the FCC. So we move on, stronger after. Lastly, we've got a lot of initiatives in space for organizational excellence. So we look forward to briefing you in the future about those initiatives. We've got over 50 breakout groups and 70 demos this week. And so we're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to work together and excited about the future, the strategic future for this organization. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a couple of insights for that this morning. Chief, back to you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Any questions for Joe from the board? Seeing none, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our Finance Investment Committee Chair, Brian Crawford.
Hey, thanks, Chief Carrizo. Today, we will provide a brief report on the FirstNet Authority's May 2024 cumulative operating budget, the recently completed financial opinion, and an overview and vote on Finance and Investment Committee Resolution 36, recommendations on fiscal year FY 2025 budget. Through May of fiscal year 2024, the FirstNet Authority has obligated a cumulative total of $56.1 million and is tracking well within forecasted parameters of the FY 2024 operational budget. For the 11th consecutive year, the First Responder Network Authority's independent auditors, Harper, Raines, Knight and Company, PA, have provided an unmodified opinion on the First Responder Network Authority's FY 2023 financial statements. The FirstNet Authority expects to have $684 million of available funds in FY 2025, which come from a combination of fees from AT&T and unobligated funds that will roll over from fiscal year 2025 from fiscal year 2024. The FirstNet Authority completed a zero-based budget formulation process to yield the amounts of the fiscal year 2025 operational budget. This comprehensive review of past initiatives and FY 2025 initiatives required to accomplish the goals and objectives of the FirstNet Authority provides confidence in management's operational funding request. The Authority's investment team exercised the same level of effort in research and forecasting to formulate the FY 2025 funding requested for the Reinvestment in Network Enhancement Fund. During the FirstNet Authority's budget formulation cycle, the Finance and Investment Committee reviewed and considered several alternatives for the fund's balance to be held in the Operational Contingency Reserve Fund. Our interest and intent are to maximize funds available for reinvestment in the National Public Safety Broadband Network and maintain a fund balance in the Operational Contingency Reserve commensurate with the risk of our congressional mandate to be self-sustaining. The result of our research and deliberations is a committee resolution recommending the board approve a resolutions to allocate $50,096,883 to the Operational Contingency Reserve, an amount equal to 50% of the FY 2025 operations budget. The FirstNet Authority proposes to allocate $684,297,357 in fiscal year FY 2025 resources into three funding categories: $100,193,766 in operations on an obligations basis, $50,096,883 in operational contingency reserve equal to 50% of the FY 2025 operations budget, and $534,006,708 in reinvestment in network enhancement funds on an obligations basis plus or minus any budgetary source delivered in FY 2025, including fiscal year end 2024 reconciliation. Before we vote, do any Finance and Investment Committee members have any questions about the proposed resolution? Hearing none, we're prepared to vote on Finance and Investment Committee Resolution 36. Madam Secretary, would you please read the operative language?
Now therefore be it resolved that the Finance and Investment Committee hereby recommends that the FirstNet Authority Board approve the FirstNet Authority's fiscal year 2025 budget of $684,297,357 for the three major funding categories of FirstNet Authority operations, operational contingency reserve, and reinvestment in network enhancement fund. Be it further resolved that the Finance and Investment Committee recommends that the Board approve the fiscal year 2025 FirstNet Authority operations budget of $100,193,766 on an obligations basis, plus with advance notice to the Board up to a 10% management reallocation allowance from the operational contingency reserve in the event of unplanned and extraordinary circumstances. Operational contingency reserve allocation of $50,096,883, an amount equal to 50% of the FirstNet Authority operations budget for fiscal year 2025, and reinvestment in network enhancement fund allocation of $534,006,708. Should the FirstNet Authority receive any additional sources of income in fiscal year 2025, including fiscal year 2024 reconciliations and fees payment, they will be added to the reinvestment in network enhancement fund. Be it further resolved that the Finance and Investment Committee recommends that the Board authorize the FirstNet Authority to enter into the necessary agreements to meet fiscal year 2025 strategic objectives. Be it further resolved that the Finance and Investment Committee recommends that the Board authorize the FirstNet Authority to take all actions necessary to execute existing nationwide public safety broadband network task orders. Be it further resolved that if the FirstNet Authority has a combined total of more or less than $684,297,357 available funds on an obligations basis in the FirstNet Authority accounts in fiscal year 2025, then the amount allocated to the reinvestment in network enhancement fund will be increased or decreased to reflect the difference. And finally, be it further resolved that the Finance and Investment Committee recommends that the Board authorize the FirstNet Authority to reallocate with advance notice to the Board up to a 10% management allowance, up to an aggregate of $10,019,376 from the operational contingency reserve in the event of unplanned and extraordinary circumstances. This 10% management allowance may be apportioned commensurate with the $100,193,766 FirstNet Authority operations budget for availability at the beginning of fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now may I have a motion to approve Finance and Investment Committee Resolution 36 from a Finance and Investment Committee member?
Mr. Chairman, this is Board Member Billy Hughes. I move adoption of this resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Hughes. May I have a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Joe Carlisle. I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. All those from the Finance and the Investment Committee in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Are there any abstentions? The resolution is adopted. Madam Secretary, please make the resolution available to the public following this meeting. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the committee's business for today. I'll hand the floor back over to you, Chief Carrizo.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate all the work the Finance and Investment Committee did, along with the entire finance staff at the FirstNet Authority, all the hard work that's been done. So thank you all for all that you've been done. To move forward, we're going to propose the financial year 2025 budget. The Board is now prepared to vote on Resolution 118. The FirstNet Authority proposes the allocated $684,297,357 in fiscal year 2025 resources into three funding categories. 100,193,766 in operations on an obligation basis. 50,096,883 in operational contingency reserve equal to 50% of the fiscal year 2025 operations budget. 534,006,708 in reinvestment in network enhancement fund on an obligations basis. Before we vote, do any board members have any questions about the proposed resolution at this time? Hearing none, we are prepared to vote on Board Resolution 118. Madam Secretary, would you please read the operative language?
Now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby approves the fiscal year 2025 budget of $684,297,357 for the three major funding categories of FirstNet Authority Operations, Operational Contingency Reserve, and Reinvestment in Network Enhancement Fund. Be it further resolved that the board approves allocation of the fiscal year 2025 budget as follows. FirstNet Authority Operations budget of $100,193,766 on an obligations basis, plus with advance notice to the board up to a 10% management reallocation allowance from the Operational Contingency Reserve allocation in the event of unplanned and extraordinary circumstances. Operational Contingency Reserve allocation of $50,096,883, an amount equal to 50% of the operations budget for fiscal year 2025, and Reinvestment in Network Enhancement Fund allocation of $534,006,708. Should the FirstNet Authority receive any additional sources of income in fiscal year 2025, including fiscal year 2024 reconciliations and fees payment, they will be added to the Reinvestment and Network Enhancement Fund. Be it further resolved that the board authorizes senior leadership to enter into the necessary agreements to meet fiscal year 2025 strategic objectives consistent with Board Resolutions 78 and 100. Be it further resolved that the board authorizes senior leadership to take all actions necessary to execute existing nationwide public safety broadband network task orders. Be it further resolved that if the FirstNet Authority has a combined total of more or less than $684,297,357 available funds on an obligations basis in the FirstNet Authority accounts in fiscal year 2025, then senior management will add or deduct the amount more or less than $684,297,357 from the Reinvestment and Network Enhancement Fund funding category. And finally, be it further resolved that the board authorizes senior leadership to reallocate with advance notice to the board up to a 10% management allowance, up to an aggregate of $10,019,376 from the Operational Contingency Reserve in the event of unplanned and extraordinary circumstances. This 10% management allowance may be apportioned commensurate with the $100,193,766 FirstNet Authority operations budget for availability at the beginning of fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion to approve Board Resolution 118?
Mr. Chairman, this is Board Member Paul Patrick. I motion to approve.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Sean McDevitt, a board member. I motion for a second.
Thank you, Sean. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign by nay. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, this resolution is adopted. Madam Secretary, please make the resolution available to the public following this meeting. Congratulations, board and staff. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from our PSAC chair, our Public Safety Advisory Committee, PSAC Chair Chris Lombard. Thank you, Chris, for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Chief Crizzo. For the benefit of the rest of the board, I had the pleasure last week of being able to have Kyle Richardson, Chief Crizzo, and Joe Russell out to Seattle. We got the opportunity to kind of show the net effect of all of this work that we've been doing. I was able to show them from incoming 911 calls in the 911 center, how information is transmitted using FirstNet out to the vehicles, apparatus, to mobile devices in the field, how that information comes back through the 911 center, back into different databases and is used. In an example of the fire into EMS and FireMet, they were able to go out on our fireboats and to see maybe some, I won't call it austere environments. It was a pretty nice day for a cruise out on the waterfront, but environments that are maybe not so traditional as to where all this information is needed. So it sounds like it was a very good experience for them. So thank you for coming in and seeing it in application. All right, to the PSAC. PSAC accomplishments. This past quarter, the associations that represent the PSAC were quite active with spring conferences. International Association of Chiefs of Police had their tech conference. International Association of Fire Chiefs had their Community Risk Reduction Conference, and Fire Rescue Med, NVFC, and others. We had a few members participate in media engagements, such as Phil Mann from the APWA highlighting Public Works Week, while featured on a local news channel to talk about the importance of FirstNet for emergency communications in the Gainesville, Florida area. Jason Rhodes from NASE MSO was on a FirstNet Authority podcast to highlight EMS Week. We heard from FirstNet Authority staff about outcomes from the Pacific Territories visits and some upcoming events, including the 2026 World Cup FIFA soccer games, which is going to be an unprecedented number of events for here in North America. Of course, we're here in Chicago, and they will be part of that, as well as my home in Seattle. With the EC, it's good to hear from FirstNet Authority staff working on improving the notifications process related to the FirstNet network in potential outages through the FirstNet Central or otherwise. Looking forward to hearing more about today during the PSAC meeting later this afternoon and during 5x5. Next slide, please. The associations that represent the PSAC will continue to meet this summer during some of their annual conferences. I know we'll see some of the board members and FirstNet Authority staff at some of these events, and I'm going to try to attend as well. It's also good to see the Tribal Advisory Group grow while adding some associations. Again, it's great that the PSAC has been getting back into full swing of things with our members. Getting board members out is always a pleasure. If there are no further questions, that concludes my update, and I'll turn the floor back over to you, Chief Carrizo.
Thank you, Chief. And we do appreciate the time in Seattle and all that we learned and the wonderful things that is happening in Seattle Fire Department. Hopefully the police department can join soon too onto the FirstNet network and learn from you all, which I know will be no problem.
The police departments always come after the fire departments.
Always. And with that, let me turn it over to our Advocacy Committee Chair, Sylvia Moyer.
Yes, thank you, Chair Carrizo, and noted Chief Lombard. I would like to share some engagement highlights from the second quarter fiscal year 2024 and our recent collaborations with our public safety stakeholders. So in FY 2024, this second quarter, there are some notable accomplishments. Our team continued to engage with public safety stakeholders across the country to offer education and awareness, as well as gather feedback on the network and FirstNet experience. Our team participated in more than 400 public safety engagements and reached 13,400 stakeholders across all 55 states and territories. During the second quarter, the team hosted 9 public safety tours in our Boulder facility to demonstrate FirstNet capabilities to 31 visitors. Earlier this month, the Boulder team also hosted the International Association of Fire Chiefs Missouri Valley Division Leadership Team as an add-on to the division's annual conference. The team did a tremendous job collecting public safety's feedback on their use of FirstNet and operational needs, which continues to be front and center as we expand and enhance the network based on public safety's needs. Through our engagement with public safety, we have learned many things. Some that are notable. Our macro coverage remains primary stakeholder ask, followed closely in the second quarter by an increased focus and interest on network availability. Public safety continues to demand high-speed data connectivity to deliver real-time situational awareness data to first responders, as well as suggest additional functionalities for existing solutions to further enhance their overall user experience and usability for various operational scenarios. We will, of course, continue our engagements with public safety and are committed to driving their unique communication needs into the FirstNet network. Regarding engagement highlights, as we typically do, I would like to highlight a few examples of our engagement with public safety during the past few months. In May, Joe, Jocelyn, and the team made a trip to Puerto Rico to join Alexandra for several engagements with local territorial leadership and staff. The group also then traveled to St. Thomas and St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. During these engagements, the team was able to provide some FirstNet education while gathering detailed, actionable feedback from stakeholders. And this is really essential to why we have these engagements across the network. The team identified immediate opportunities to affect change and is actively working with AT&T and local representatives in Puerto Rico to resolve some outstanding concerns. And this is a perfect time for us to pause and invite Alexandra to speak about Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands visit, because she represents islands and territories with a unique perspective that strengthens our work. So Alexandra, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. In this visit in Puerto Rico, we spent valuable time with PREMA, the Puerto Rico Emergency Management Agency, to talk about their concerns and the things that are really working well for Puerto Rico. Most importantly, and I think we need to stress this fact, we presented the first responders there with a Spanish version of the Emergency Management Resource Guide, and they were really, really excited about it and asked for copies to be sent to all the 78 municipalities. This resource guide, being able to be in Spanish, can also work for several first responders that have moved to the mainland and who prefer to see how they can integrate FirstNet into the emergency plans in their vernacular language. So I think that was something really important that should be highlighted. We went to St. John and St. Thomas, and we met with a CIO and several first responders there. And we got to see, not just from them, but because we visited several sites, we got to see the particularities of serving islands that have mountain regions and that have very narrow roads to get to the places that need to be served. And I think I'm going to turn it over to the fellow board member more, so she can give us a very detailed about what we saw, particularly in St. John.
Thank you, Board Member Alexandra. Let me just say, it's always a pleasure to be in the territories with you under your great leadership. You have really worked, as Sylvia said, to highlight some of the challenges that our first responders in islands face, but also the opportunities for FirstNet to really do an outstanding job with coverage. And so it was a full circle moment. I first traveled to the U.S. Virgin Islands when I worked for Senator John D. Rockefeller IV as part of his legislative team. So being back there now on the board of FirstNet, to be on the ground, hear how it's going, and again, look at the topography, the geography, the financial challenges, the governmental challenges. It was really eye-opening to see where we've come, because there's a lot of progress that has been made, but clearly there is still much work to be done. So certainly appreciate the commitment of you, Board Member Alexandra, and your ongoing focus, commitment, and keeping your finger on the pulse so that this board keeps its finger on the pulse. And so I look forward to continuing engagement. I also want to give a shout out to the staff, because I know that the work in the territories is not easy, and hearing directly from the first responders, the firefighters, the policemen and women who are on the ground there, particularly in the USVI, which I think when we talk about it, Puerto Rico really, even with all of its challenges, is still first among territories. And then when we go out from there, there is still much that we can learn and do there. So continued, I look forward to the continued focus, the continued partnership with AT&T, and continuing to work with you under your leadership. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Jocelyn and Alexandra. It consistently gives us texture and perspective about the mission, the importance of connecting with people where they are to see firsthand how we can serve them. So thank you for that. Continuing on with some highlights, over the last couple of months, Chief Carrizo and the team participated in several national fire conferences, including the Metro Fire Chiefs Annual Meeting and the International Association of Fire Chiefs Hazmat Conference in Baltimore, Maryland. As always, these conferences offer excellent venues for fire service personnel to provide feedback both in ad hoc format and during operational capabilities workshops. Additionally, the team continues to bring technology examples with them to the hosted booth to show, not just tell attendees about the art of the possible. For the second year in a row, the team is facilitating a virtual emergency management cohort. This group grew from about 8 last year to nearly 20 emergency managers from local, state, and federal agencies. Our own emergency management subject matter experts have facilitated monthly virtual cohort meetings since January. These meetings offer an opportunity for the group to provide targeted feedback on a specific topic. For example, one month they reviewed the existing emergency management guide to identify opportunities for improvement, while in another month, the group provided their perspective and feedback on outage notifications as provided through FirstNet Central. Now let's move on to 5x5, the Public Safety Innovation Summit preview. So last but not least, I will take a brief opportunity to preview the next few days. We are honored to have keynotes from our very own Joe Wassel and Chief Carrizo, as well as Derek Orr, the Division Chief of NIST, Public Safety Communications Research Division, and Dr. Lori Moore-Morrell, U.S. Fire Administrator. Additionally, Chief Leo Schmitz of the Cook County Sheriff's Police Department will welcome us to the city of Chicago. We will be presenting the Chief Harlan R. McEwen Public Safety Broadband Communications Award, as well as the second annual Patriot Awards. Breakout sessions hosted by FirstNet Authority and PSCR will provide attendees with unique insights to public safety technology use, ongoing innovation, and cutting-edge research and development. Technology demos give academia and industry opportunities to share their respective research and innovation. This is an important piece because to get practitioners and academics together to innovate is what makes this so rich in terms of an innovation summit. Attendees will have opportunities to provide direct input and feedback on current and future public safety communications, operational needs, and research and development. This feedback is critical and helps FirstNet Authority and this board drive the future of this FirstNet network. I am looking forward to being on the ground with you in Chicago as we meet and connect regarding strengthening the innovation for the FirstNet network. So Chief Carrizo, this concludes my report regarding Advocacy Committee update. And again, I look forward to seeing everyone in Chicago. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Sylvia, and we'll see you very soon. Now we're going to turn the meeting over to Jocelyn Moore, the chair of the Programs and Future Planning Committee. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chief Carrizo. Good morning, fellow board members and esteemed guests. It's great to be with you, and I'm super excited about 5x5. So thank you for that overview, Sylvia. As we turn to slide 22, as you can see, we've crossed a major threshold with 6 million connections on the network, leveraging over hundreds of the most current devices and over 220 unique public safety applications. It's clear that the impact of our expanded coverage, network investments, and innovation have been a catalyst for public safety to adopt the solution that was specifically designed for their use. As you can see from this slide, FirstNet continues to see growth in many areas. More than 28,000 agencies, federal, state, local, tribal, and territories across the nation trust their cellular communications to FirstNet. This is due to our coverage, always-on priority and preemption, a broad and diverse device ecosystem, mission-critical applications, our ability to put temporary coverage anywhere in the nation at no cost, as well as our commitment to the underserved. Over 755 devices have been certified for use on the NPSBN. Subscribers have access to a fleet of over 180 plus dedicated deployable assets, in addition to hundreds of AT&T deployables, now inclusive of maritime assets. Next slide, please. As you can see, our agency growth continues to trend upward as new agencies join the FirstNet network and our churn stays very low. Next slide. The same can be said for our connection targets that are inclusive of not just agency paid connections, but also subscriber paid connections as well. Next slide. As you heard earlier from our Finance and Investment Committee Chair, the esteemed Brian Crawford, the FirstNet Authority is continuing what we began earlier this year with our 10-year, $8+ billion investment initiative. As we continue to plan for future investments, the FirstNet Authority is focused on ensuring the network is available where our public safety stakeholders need it, including those operating in our nation's rural areas, territories, and tribal lands across the country. And Chair Moyer, I want to underscore what you said about all of the engagements, and particularly where rural territories and tribal are concerned. These visits are critical. The board is not just showing up for a tour. We want to be sure that we are driving toward the public safety solutions that first responders are asking us for across the country. To that extent, the FirstNet Authority Board will consider additional coverage-related investments later in 2024, focused on serving our stakeholders in those geographies. We could not be more excited by the possibilities and impacts that our 10-year, $8+ billion investment to evolve the FirstNet core network, as well as expand the radio access network, will make to public safety across the country. Thank you, Chief Carrizo. This concludes my update, my very brief update.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Jocelyn. At this time, I'll ask Joe if you have any final words to the board.
Just a few closing thoughts. Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Board, for the approval of this budget. I think the FY25 budget is a thoughtful investment in our people and in our culture at the FirstNet Authority. It's also a major investment in public safety, including over $500 million for the continued coverage enhancement and network evolution. As we sit here this morning, we have response operations happening, emergency response operations happening in California, New Mexico, Wisconsin, Iowa, Massachusetts, and Texas, just to name some. We have folks out on the edge supporting public safety. So for me to be thinking about that as we're at 5x5, it really stands out as our operational edge 24/7 supporting public safety, to partner, and not be late to the needs of public safety. So as we come together in this unique conference this week, one of the few conferences, if not the only conference, that includes every single discipline of public safety, emergency management, 911, fire, police, and EMS under one roof at one time, talking about the combined efforts of public safety in our great nation. Lastly, as I was talking to our unofficial historian Jeff Bratcher this week, and that's coming to your next position description, by the way, I asked, where were we 5 years ago? Tell me what those numbers looked like. The slides say it. I want to highlight it. 5 years ago this month, we were at 600,000 connections as opposed to 6 million plus today. We were at 7,200 agencies as opposed to 28,000 today. So that is remarkable. My job is to look, where will we be in the next 5 years? Where are we going to be in 2029 after reauthorization, after this investment takes hold and we get to the next, and working together with the board throughout the authority, with our partners at NTIA and beyond. how are we going to get to 2029? What are we going to look like? Who do we want to be? What do we want to be about? And I'll end with, I like these little 3-word little quipish things. I can't help it, right? So VIP, it's the vision, innovation, and partnership that got us to the amazing place we are today. And that's what will get us into 2029. So thank you for my closing comments. It's a pleasure to be here. Always an honor to be with the board and our stakeholders. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Joe. At this time, is there any other new business to come before the board from the? Seeing none, first I'd like to remind everybody that the PSAC meeting will be at 1 o'clock in this room. So hope to see everybody there. But before we close and ask for a motion for that, I would just like to, based on what you said, Joe, may all our thoughts and prayers be with all those public safety providers along with their families that are supporting them while they're out there doing this today, tomorrow, and into the future. Because as you said, it's your VIP, but it's also the public safety people foremost, and that's what we're here for. And also to our FirstNet AT&T family that are there, and our FirstNet Authority family. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, it's Board Member Designee Billy Bob Brown Jr. I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Warren Mickens. I second that motion.
Thank you, Warren. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in today's combined board and committees meeting, and to the audience on WebEx who joined us today. Thank you for being here. And at this time, I would consider this meeting adjourned.